Well, it seems my ship is blown up. Oh no. Moving on. In tonight's episode of Reverse Shift, the CIRG sends a sternly worded letter to Orion University. The Dark Wheel does donuts in the imagination of LFT 509, and I drift a whole Type 10 kitted out for war into the maw of a dredger. But more on that later. First, the news. Starting with the most recent Galnet offerings. A lot of things have happened this week, and I will attempt to condense everything down to be as brief as I can without losing the meat of the message. The Brewer Corporation, the manufacturing powerhouse behind the Colonia Bridge project, seems to have quietly allowed leaks to indicate that the third phase of the Colonia project, slated to begin early 3308, may be larger than planned and slightly different, and more ambitious. Corporate stability notwithstanding, it does sound like they have spooled up production of engineered frameshift drives, which, mind you, are starting to become the golden standard, as may as well be sold like this right out of the box, if you ask me. But I suppose not everyone wants to hoon an anaconda to the degree that it can jump 330 some odd light years in a single go. But that's just my opinion. Moving on to darker news, and the NMLA is back at it again, as earlier this week they boarded and took control of the former flagship, the Steel Majesty, and bailed out back to Madrid. It seems remnants of the Neo-Malinist Order of Madrid and former Steel Majesty crew have gathered back up, tried to get the band back together to try and do another tour of terror, as the ACT has begun closing in on Theta 7. Also, it is a hostage situation, as not everyone made it off the ship when they were boarded, and unlike everyone's favorite space commie, the NMLA will no doubt use the hostages as a bargaining chip to prevent an attempt at retaking the ship. No doubt there are some within the Empire and Federation weighing the value of just a handful of crew members sacrificed for the greater good of the galaxy, and arguing for a large relativistic cannon to just gut the Steel Majesty from extreme standoff rages. I never got why capital ships slug it out so close to each other instead of trying to snipe using mass drivers from multiple megameters away, but that's none of my business. And that said, the leader of the NMLA has been traced back to the Panjabal system, I think I pronounced that right, where it seems he is hiding among the Thar God cult, those Xenos-worshipping people that think the Thargoids are really our gods, come back and angry at us. And mad props to Commander Therion Signy, who cracked that cipher that the ACT posted last week. And that said, there is a question of just where the bomb maker and his cronies went from there, as 3 megaships were launched from the system. Or possibly they just took off in a completely different direction, and the Far God cult connection is a red herring. That would actually make sense, considering this information was passed out not using the usual channels. Anyway, from one Xenos-related story to the next, Salvation's boys in the T-Tauri system, Taurus Mining Ventures, have managed to fend off the rogue Aegis Admiral's ham-fisted attempt to find any kind of evidence implicating Salvation has intentionally baited the Thargoids into various systems or not. While independent pilots that took part on the side of Aegis may still freely dock with the Musashi to pick up their payments for their work, the majority of the crew have been allowed to leave. It seems Admiral Tanner and his officer cadre are under temporary custody of Taurus Mining Ventures before they and the ship will be transferred to Aegis custody, no doubt pending trial. When I originally read the story, it looked more like they were being transferred over to Salvation's internal security, but I think I have it correct now. And finally, for the story that is blown up like a dumpster fire, anthropologists from other universities, research groups, and outside observers are claiming that the Orion University's actions are threatening the extinction of the Scrivener clan, as they have not been able to draw on any materials to maintain and repair systems aboard the ancient ship, as outside observers have been noticing more and more malfunctions obvious to people outside the ship. Additionally, they cannot synthesize materials into fuel or air because, well, they aren't drawing in any materials. But with it being a deadlock siege, 2 different community goals have emerged. The first, by Orion University, is an attempt to coerce the Scriveners into giving up their knowledge core by appealing to their scientific nature, and then requesting Independent pilots deliver unusual encrypted files, anomalous bulk scan data, and unidentified scan archives to Shara Gateway in HIP 43670. The second is an indirect competition, and pilots are requested to deliver emergency power cells, power converters, and power transfer buses to Oramus terminal in the HIP 43670 system, and hope it is that the Scriveners should, if they accept delivery of these supplies, be able to repair their ship and bypass the remote lockout of their hyperdrive. And there is no clear-cut foreseeable victory to either community goal at this time, however. Technically, there are actually 3 community goals this week, as Canon and the Stellar Research Group has given up attempting to negotiate between the Scriveners and Orion University, and has decided a more proactive approach is now necessary. While they have condemned Orion University's siege of the Scriveners' vessel, the CIRG has requested through unofficial channels that independent pilots directly travel to the besieged vessel in the Okost PC-C C29-0 system and deliver goods directly into the intake of the dredger itself. The CIRG is requesting any materials be delivered to the ship. Water, fuel, raw materials, even smaller disused ships collecting dust in your carriers. The Scriveners can and will use it. Which loops back to why I am dropping materials out of this here Type 10. Because while the Canon and Stellar Research Group may be hopeful that this situation will be resolved peacefully, it is my opinion that it will turn into a shooting war, and preparation for that eventuality is paramount. And so I am offering the Scriveners preparatory goods. Walk softly and carry a big stick, after all. That and Orion University just seems to have the kind of leadership that would attempt forceful boarding action. So it makes sense from my possibly warped perspective to try and tip the scales so that the Scriveners at least have a fighting chance. Or at the very least they can upgrade some of their weaponry and become something of a bit of a hedgehog. To that end, I am donating my Type 10 Defender with a full complement of Pack-Hound missile launchers, Class 6 prismatic shields, and the contents of my hold, which I have been drip-fitting into the intake maw of the Scrivener's dredger, of which it was a mix of hydrogen fuel, medical supplies, liquid oxygen, synthetic meat, and a few tons of titanium to top it off. And while I wanted to also bring them, I think it was 64 tons of mining explosives, I couldn't quite squeeze that into the cargo hold and make it here. But with an empty hold, it is time to dive on in to the maw. Well, it seems my ship is blown up. Oh no. Moving on. Thank you all for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and click that little bell for notifications, and to join me in my eternal crusade against YouTube and its sorting algorithms. And hopefully I will see you all in the next video.